Scions of the Southland, number 322. That is a very forgettable number in a time of period of the athletic calendar that usually we all forget about because nothing happens. But we got, I think, a fun one here today. Jack Purdy's here. Jake Grant's with us. Actually, Schwarn is off on a well-deserved work break, so he's hopefully flown somewhere nice to take a good break. And then, but we've also got Kelly Quinlan here with us from Jackets Online, and uh, well, probably the most learned tech media member at this point in the 21st century. I'll put it that I can't speak to pre then, but Kelly, thanks for coming and hanging out with us.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Happy to come on.
Uh, there's a number of things that have happened still in this July, where we have pretty much taken some time off the podcast. The 5 for 5 policies come out. We got the Tech Hall of Fame, but what we have Kelly here for is to talk about 5 for 5, and then also just kind of it's a reset point in the football tenure of Brent Key with the football program, and so kind of going through like, all right, hashing out what we've learned so far, and then what can we expect for 2026. Jake, anything before we get going on 5 for 5?
Oh, nothing too much. Just good to be back in the rhythm, back in things. It's been a busy summer, but aren't they all, right? So
Somehow we don't want them to be, but they end
yeah.
up being that way. So that's always annoying. Um,
I got half a tree on my front driveway right now because I was doing tree trimming and all that junk yesterday and today. So yeah, we don't want them to be busy, but
so that sounds
they
like
get there.
fire. Sounds like you got a good firewood. Um, Possibly one day. So, anyways, there's new big policy came out with the NCAA in the last few weeks, which is the 5 for 5 policy, which has been floated for a while. But effectively, what that means is any NCAA athlete gets 5 years to play as many games as they want. Their redshirt rule is not really as big of a deal. You don't run out of eligibility after you graduate or anything like that. It's just you get 5 years, your clock starts. And so that affects tech in some ways because there's people now that have extra eligibility. They may affect how roster decisions are done down the line and whatnot. So, uh, Kelly, when you saw this coming down the line, did you have any a how do you think about this as a just a policy in terms of just the broader NCAA sports front? And then when it comes to tech, is there any particular things that stuck out with how this will affect us on the football side?
I thought about it honestly in a different angle, which was basketball, where there
Yeah,
was no, when football they put in the 4 games, you could play 4 games, blah, blah, blah. In basketball, if you came in and played like 1 minute, you burned your
oh,
year.
true. Yeah, yeah,
And so that kind of sparked it a little bit with me. That, I just thought that was dumb. Like
right.
it kind of punished teams or punished players that maybe weren't ready to contribute, but got in a garbage game early in the season or whatever. Um, in terms of football, it's I mean, you got Miami had a guy that played like 9 years in college.
What was that dude's name? I forget his name.
God,
Was he like a
it was
tight end or
he
something?
was a tight end, I think, and he had a bunch of injuries. Bless him, but like it was a little ridiculous, and it's different if it's even like BYU, where you got guys going on mission trips or whatever. And I'm
Yeah,
sure there'll be carve outs for all of those things, but
yeah.
I haven't actually like read the full thing yet. Supposedly there's not one for medicals, but Brent Key was telling me he thinks that there'll be one like some kind of 6th year medical thing or
Exemption six.
something.
Yeah, something like that. Cam McCormick was the guy.
Okay, yeah.
Who played yeah. I remember this headline coming out in 2024 that I pulled up now. Is Cam McCormick granted ninth year of eligibility, and yeah, that was crazy. I think at that point we knew the eligibility rules had hit some sort of they broken contain in some form or fashion. So, uh, but yeah, like I could imagine like there's some dudes who just like who knows who has a bad knee injury when they're 18 or 19, and it just takes them 2 years to actually get fully healthy if it's a bad enough injury. And it's just like, well, now you played for maybe 2 years on a 5 year clock. How do you adjudicate that, and how do you make that work? So
Yeah.
I could totally see how that would eventually come about.
I have a strong pre-existing bias on this one, and it's only because of a very specific set of circumstances. And that was that if you were a freshman the year after COVID, so the 2020 2021 athletic year, you were essentially given the old regime pre-COVID 4 years
Hmm.
at asterisks and things like that. Whereas everyone who came in 2020, or was already there in 2020, got that fifth year, right? So if you were a freshman and then it affected, the next couple of years down the
Hmm.
line as people, I guess, flushed out of the system with an extra year. So my gut reaction when I saw this was like, that made that terrible for those people, of which I'm related to several who were in in that very specific niche,
Right.
cousins, siblings, things like that. But if everyone has five, I think from a roster perspective, it makes a lot of sense. I like the sanity, if you will. I know we don't have to get into NCAA insanity codes and things like that. That's a whole different ball of wax. But I think for if there's continuity as a team, it benefits the fan, right? Because you understand and they're going to be around. Is that necessarily true in the transfer world? I don't know about that. And also, if you're a borderline freshman who probably wasn't going to be able to play anyways as a freshman, then you're not just, you know, burning a year. So I think all in all, it's probably a plus. I honestly had completely forgotten about the basketball piece, Kelly, and I really like that mention. That's huge. I mean, we've had all these weird carve outs in football for years. Why
Why
not?
not there? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so the other part of it is supposedly there's a one-time transfer rule that'll also be
Yeah.
factored into this. We'll see. Again, I think all this stuff's going to get courted out for a while and lawsuits and Darren Hetner and like all those people you see on Twitter, the famous lawyers that are becoming popular on social media. Those dudes will fight and duke it out to get whatever's best for their clients, which is their right to do. And
Yeah.
until there's probably like antitrust or something from like, the congressional level or something. It's going to continue to be that way, or they come to a CBA with the players and the student athletes
Mhm.
to iron it out. But this is sort of a patch. The way Brent Key told me he was approaching is that they have sort of alternative plans for however it plays out. There's a couple. There's 9 guys it impacts on Tech's roster in terms of
Hmm.
older players, and then another dozen that are basically juniors or sophomores right now that would get another year out of it. So like the
Yeah.
Shane Marshall, who was a kick returner last year,
Yeah.
like he gets another year now, which is nice for him because he hasn't played and may not play as much this year with Justice and Malachi Hulsley.
Right.
But it might be a guy that, in 2 years is really good and you would maybe want another year out of. But it just depends. I mean, the good players are going to go pro, like especially at certain positions. So it's kind of a juggling act. The big thing with Brent is, and every other college coach I've talked to is the 105. And are you going to grandfather guys in that are getting a fifth year now, which I would assume probably happens if they stay at the same school. They get
Hmm.
maybe a grandfather clause. There's actually one for walk-ons right now that hasn't been talked about. There's a little bit of a
Huh.
grandfather clause for some of them if they were on a roster as of a certain date with the 105. So, um, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm like super curious, like if this sticks or not. Like so much of the stuff that's been proposed and put into place, falls apart, or like enforcement's been a big issue with
Yeah.
NIL. Like
Yeah.
all these things keep kind of falling apart, or even like what was it, Darren Mensa, like the quarterback at Duke, like backing out
Hmm.
of his deal. Like there's all these different aspects of this that it's been the wild wild west, so we'll see if it sticks. But on paper it makes sense, and the reality is there's a huge difference between if I'm playing offensive line going against a 24-year-old defensive end versus a guy that's
Right.
within 4 or 5 years of my age, and going against the guy who's in his sixth year or should be playing pro ball or not playing football in
Right.
terms of
Yeah.
their body development.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, and you extrapolate that same exact thing to volleyball, softball, baseball too, right?
Absolutely.
The and that's kind of what we saw. I think that was kind of discussed to death for those sports then, but yeah, I think if you extrapolate to all of those, I'm interested, especially with some of the with a program like Tech and baseball coming to mind, where so many of our guys get drafted as a draft eligible sophomore, junior, even senior, right? Like who is it that sticks around for that fifth year? Is that your whatever the college equivalent of a triple A or quad A type player is, or is that more of somebody that is more of a impact player? I think that's probably a big question mark, but
Yeah. Maybe
You've
John.
had a
Who's to
little
say
of
till we
each.
get there, right? What's up?
Yeah, I mean, you've had a little of each of those, like a Mason Patel,
Yeah.
right? Like, who
Yeah.
was, a really effective reliever this year, was a fifth year guy, and just doesn't have major league velocity, right? Like that's the knock on him. So like he's gonna make more money probably as a college player than he will in the minor leagues up until the point if he can figure out how to make a major league roster. So those are
Right.
the exceptions to that. And then there's other guys that are like, maybe a dude that throws smoke that's in his fourth year, hasn't pitched a lot, doesn't have great control, but rolls the dice on himself in the minor leagues rehabbing. And I think, it'll be interesting. Like Parker Burrsma is like a guy like that sort of
Yeah.
that left that is maybe rolling the dice on himself here.
Yeah.
Maybe John
Very
Giesler
fair.
plays the seventh year, eighth year, maybe. Who knows? I like how in this case it feels like such a rare win for the NCAA right now. It's like, oh, this is like something that like on paper makes some sense. Like it's easy to understand. There's not a gazillion variables going on with it, which is crazy to contrast against the absolute kerfuffle that's going on at Capitol Hill right now, where the SEC and Big 12 and Big 10 are trying to shove through this bill that who the hell knows if that ever even hits the light of day. I mean, I know some senators have done some work on it, have tried to get it there, but they keep finding things in the way, and the SEC is like, well, maybe we will break away. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to touch it more than that, but it's nice that in a moment where there's a lot of impending chaos between that, the TV deals 2 years. I mean, that's another big ticking time clock for this entire infrastructure. It's just like, all right, they got something that at least makes some sense for a little bit, and at best, it works and stays. And maybe some guys get an extra year that weren't going to get one before this thing really, really blows up. Or it's just something we never think about after today, and it just exists. Who knows? But I'm glad to see that it's in a good. It makes sense in the moment in time. My head went to Jordan Allen as well. It's like one of those speedster guys on the team who had a couple moments last year in terms of like he's not going to be our number one wide receiver. We had guys ahead of him in the depth chart, but he had some roles, and if we could get him out in space and speed and whatnot, he was a dude that can really make a difference in a couple of games. But if he's not gonna make an NFL roster with just off of pure speed or something else, that he still is a huge weapon on the college side. And I mean, imagine him in 3 years, like assuming his speed holds up and he doesn't get super hurt, that dude's a terror. That dude's gonna be a terror for defenses. So there's definitely some dudes, at least on Tech's side right now, pending isn't transfer. Who the hell knows? There's no guarantees of roster year to year at this point. But hey, that is another guy that came to mind of like, okay, that'd be really big for us down the line if he's still sticking with us.
Right, the most obvious one was from 24 to 25 that pops into my head, which is Weston Franklin.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Who played one snap in one
Yeah.
game with Jeff was the head coach, burned his
Yeah.
shirt before
yeah,
the 4 game rule. And, they had all kinds of trouble at center last year. And that
yeah.
might have made a difference in a game or two. Like,
True.
that especially in the back end of the season when and it had a trickle down effect on the whole offensive line because maybe do different things with it if you have him for another year, fifth
Right.
year. And I know Brent would have loved to have him for another year, but like
Yeah.
that's one that like sticks in my head, like as a guy that they could have really used last year and didn't have because of the dumbness of the original rule. I'm sure there's a bunch of them in other sports if you kind of look around that
Oh
had the
yeah.
same
Yeah.
thing that
Yeah.
maybe got hurt or
Yeah.
whatever, but didn't qualify. With the basketball one, it's like the medical redshirt rule is super weird. I forget it's a percentage of games
Yeah.
played,
Mm.
and it's like pretty low. Like you play in more than like a half dozen games or something, you can't get one. Wasey got one last year,
Yeah.
and he was like right on the edge. I remember from not being able to get it. Like they were having to do like a calculation to figure out,
Interesting. Huh.
if he
Figure all that out.
qualified or not. Yep.
The legend of the boot crew. Uh, you invoked the former head coach, which was kind of a segue into what the idea of what I wanted to go through here, which is, so Brent's new quarterback, lots of newness, lots of new staff. So I want to kind of reflect on what we've learned from what Brent Key has done in these last few years as head coach, which it's a very easy compare and contrast with the previous guy, of course, because a lot of things changed in kind of a second with that team. But basically everything since October 1, 2022, which was the day that we beat Pitt up in Pitt. And granted, that 24th ranked Pitt team was not worthy of a ranking, but they still were ranked and so it counts.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, one of the big things that has just come to my mind is that the baseline competency of Tech can still be high, and Brent probably was one of the very few guys out there who could actually get the fan base to believe that as well, and make the experience, make the expectations, make it worth having high expectations. I think, I mean, for decades, Tech fans have been just burned time and time and time again. Everyone loses for the most part, so like that's not we're not special in that regard, uh, but it still hurts all the same. Um, and I think the fact that Brent's like, hey, I've put this on paper and I've put this on the field in the results that like, hey, we can I say almost beat Georgia, beat a lot of other big teams, which was just such a huge experience difference for a lot of people and has like really affected, I think, fan base now and students now too, which can have its own carry on effects for a long time.
I mean, hey, they did beat Georgia like in 24. Like it just
Yeah.
was taken
Yeah,
away from you. Like
yeah, yeah.
I was
Wait,
standing on the field, watched the whole thing like unfold like a few feet in front of me multiple times that game, and
Yeah.
had like other people in the industry like texting me about the game during it,
yeah,
and just being like, this was taken away from you. And but yeah, I mean, this is what Brent has said to me from day one. And he said when he was an assistant here too. And there's a famous clip of him like kind of barking back at me humor in a humorous way when
yeah.
I asked him about recruiting at Tech versus Alabama.
Hmm.
And he believes he can go get anyone and do and win any game. And there's no ceiling to the program. That's his view of it. And as an alum and all those things, I think and it's coming from a place of honesty. He's not trying to be, um, just saying it for the sake. A lot of guys say it for the sake of saying it, right? Like,
Yeah,
I've covered some G6 schools. I've covered some programs that just have no way of winning, right?
right.
At the end of the day, Georgia Tech has the pieces in place to win. And it's funny because Tech fans are upset about, maybe the way the season ended last year or what's gone on the past 20 years or whatever. And like, if you're NC State, you would like kill to have played in three ACC championship games.
Right.
They've never
Yeah.
played in one. Like,
Right. Yeah.
they've never even been there. Like,
And
it is interesting the perspective you have when you step outside of your bubble, and they have great fan support. South Carolina, same thing, man. Like, what the hell have they ever played for? Like, I covered that league
Right.
too, and
A Gator
I,
Bowl, like,
yeah. I mean, they had a
something
stretch
like
where they
that.
went to like a couple of bowl games over like 20 years, like so I think everything's relative. Georgia Tech's had a lot of success in the last 50 years, or last 40, I'd say, since 90, right? Like,
basically, yeah, yeah,
um, 89, 90. Like, um, so why can't you get back there? Like, other teams are competing. Look at Miami, and Miami is sort of an extreme example of it, but like, what Clemson turned around and did. Think about what Clemson was kind of a joke really after 91.
Hmm.
yeah.
They
No, they're
went
definitely, yeah,
through
the,
17 years of kind of being irrelevant, 18 years of irrelevancy
yeah,
essentially in the league.
yeah.
So,
Famous head coach, not
And
famous results, though. Yeah,
and
yeah.
and I think like it's one of those things where if you shift a touchdown in a season, maybe over the last two, three seasons, that the fans perceive it completely differently. Like seven points worth of points wins you multiple very large, very significant games. And yeah, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, right? But like you're right, the pieces are there. Jack, you're right. I think, you know, baseline competency is much higher than it was. We're certainly gonna knock on some wood here, but past a confusing loss to Bowling Green, like that's I I have confidence in a, 6-ish win floor, kind of no matter what's on the schedule. And this isn't really a take on what's coming this year. We can talk about that in a little bit, but like I don't know, there's a trust aspect to it, and I
yeah,
think that's something that like zooming out a little bit is like you earn that trust as a fan in a sport. Usually it's football, but sometimes it might be basketball or baseball. And that's why you see a halo effect of interest in the brand in general, in selling out baseball games, in women's basketball, selling tickets pretty well this year, despite a kind of confusing roster and coach situation coming into the year, and then kind of a dud of a non-con before kind of putting things together. And that, I mean, that's
Yeah.
got momentum now, but it didn't in December, and they were still
Nope.
selling tickets because people are riding high off of, hey, volleyball made the postseason again, and they're doing good. Football went to a fun bowl that had some vibes to it, and what
Yeah.
we're off to a hot start. I think that it's one of those things where it's like not like a I'm ready to get hurt again kind of thing, but it's one of those things where it's like I trust that the team will be ready to play in this game, so I will be there.
Right.
If you can make it there, or make time to watch on TV if you're
Right.
watching from home.
which was
So,
which was not the case beforehand. Like
oh,
that, literally, like it
no, it
was
wasn't.
aggressively not the case beforehand. And
Not
so,
not to be a we've had good seats since we graduated kind of guy, but like our
Mhm.
seats are pretty good. And the fact that it was a ghost town around us in the like 12th row in the lower deck for a FBS football team, that's crazy,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's not like that anymore,
no, it shouldn't be the case at all.
So
Yeah, and I think and Brent's attitude of being like, "Hey, there's no reason we can't put this all together," matches also like kind of what the rest of the institute does off the field too. Like, you want to have the best research team in the country in academia, come to us. We got it. You want to have one of the best degrees in the country, bam, we got like anything we that tech wants to be the best at, they generally can be or really, really damn close to. And at least in sports, you have a shot for someone. You actually have to do it against somebody, and someone could slip up, and you can float to the top. Sometimes it's not collaborative like the rest of everything else the institute does. Um, so yeah, no, I believe him when he says, yeah, I think we can do it here. I'm like, yeah, why not? We've done it 4 times in the past. Whenever a really, really good coach shows there finds a way to Georgia Tech, they usually win something pretty damn big. Um, so that that just at least dating back to very, very long history over the course of a century plus of time. Um, that said, on the flip side, it's really hard to stay good for 14 weeks in a row. like football is hard, man. I'm looking at Jake. You mentioned like losing by one score. I'm looking at the last couple of years, like Syracuse game, lost by 3. That's just a touchdown. Obviously, the Georgia game, the Vanderbilt game. I mean, technically that was a one-score game, even though that definitely did not play like a one-score game, but it happened that way. Last year, let me pull up last year's games.
The
Uh,
bowl game was literally
the bowl game we should have
this
won.
was
Yeah,
this far away, like basically 5, 6 inches
yeah,
on a football from winning the game at the end with Patterson catching the football in the end zone.
right.
If he just either gets to it or the ball's placed a hair better, like
Yeah,
like that was the difference in that game. But again, like you've benefited. The one thing I keep talking about with last year is the Wake Forest game. If they lose that
yeah,
game, which they should have lost,
they really should have. Yeah,
maybe that changes how things play out in a better way because you face adversity
yeah,
early on and you
yep.
don't get so overconfident going into those last few games. It is a check on everything,
yeah.
a check on the Heisman hype for Haynes King,
Right,
which
because they started the campaign right after that game, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
think it
then
was soon after that, and
yeah,
that momentum getting challenged there maybe sets you on a different path, but you don't know. Like maybe then they end up winning 7 games. Like you don't know how that plays out. But I think that's the delineator there. If everyone perceives the season differently, if you
yeah,
lose there and you still win 9 games, right? Like, um,
Because you win one of the big ones coming down the stretch.
sure, and
Whether that's that last home game or the Mercedes-Benz game or a bowl game, if you win that, then people are like, wow, yeah, we really closed it out strong. We beat UGA. Oh, we won that bowl game. Or,
instead of beating Boston College as your last win
right,
for
yeah,
the
yeah,
season,
yeah, and
in a
even
game you had to come back in.
yeah,
yeah, right, yeah, that game drove
that's
me
a
up a
good point.
wall. Even that NC State game, which felt like we lost by 85 points, that was an 8 point game in the end. So that was 48-36,
No, they
or
were
no, it's
all
a
like
12
they
point,
were
12 points.
all.
So it was close-ish, but it still is
Yeah,
like, oh, okay,
the Georgia game was horrendous offensively, and it was still a close game
yeah,
because I
Yeah.
think they concussed Gunnar Stockton in the first quarter of that game. It looked like it, man. It looked like he was like,
there
like
he wasn't hitting
Tevin
balls.
Washington back there throwing the football. I was like,
Yeah,
what just happened? Like, and no shot on Tevin, but like Tevin
no.
wasn't a world great. Like the dude like could not throw the football forward in the game, and I was like, huh. I was like, I know he's not like this great quarterback, but I wonder if
It was
something's wrong with
interesting.
him.
It was interesting. It did seem like there was just stuff not going their way that definitely usually does go their way. I mean, I know we made some defensive changes that day that was like, huh, Phoenix Felton, maybe he should play more and guys like that. But it's still there's still an amount of Georgia just not being Georgia in that game. Then they went on and like absolutely murdered teams until who was it that beat them in the playoff?
I've got a
I don't
I've got a
know.
Yeah.
question. I should know, but I don't. I don't want to perceive them any more than I have to. Not that I don't believe that both of these are Brent Key specific, but like, is there anything from these first 2 points, baseline competency in general, and also sustaining through a season, that there's a special point we'd want to make about like the Brent specifically having this effect versus any baseline competent coach could have done this versus shoe guy?
What's the extra thing
Like,
that makes Brent special in this regard, basically?
yeah, like that comes to mind. I'm just
I
throwing
mean,
it
I
out there.
think, you know, it's interesting because Paul Johnson did the same thing, right? Like every week you went out with Paul, even
Yep.
playing Clemson when they were at their peak, he would give them a game. Like it wasn't,
Yep.
Yeah.
maybe they weren't in a position to win the game per se, but it would be a tight game for 3/4 of the game or, into the fourth quarter. And well, all the games with Georgia pretty much were like that, except for next, his last one, next to last one. One of them was a blowout, but like really every game he coached against them was a nail biter. Like that was, and that's kind of a thing, you didn't see a ton of that really with O'Leary, FSU games. Other than that, most of them were pretty competitive throughout his tenure. I think it's what you see when you have a coach who's not a buffoon. And
Yeah.
like, and
Fair.
I like Jeff a lot, but he was so out of his depth as a head coach. And
Yeah.
I saw it at Temple. That was the thing that scared me when Tech hired him. I had watched him. I cover USF as kind of a side project, and like I had watched him choke in a very winnable league, which USF has done multiple times now too. But like in a way that made no sense. They were losing to like FCS teams at Temple with a loaded roster. Like none of it made any sense to me, and I was like, this is a bad sign because he inherited a team that should win like 10 games and was like struggling a little bit
Yeah.
and getting eight, wins or whatever, and knew all the red flags about him. And so I think it's more of a statement about that. And sometimes you can just have a bad fit. Like Brian Harsin was a terrible hire at Auburn. Like it was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
terrible
For
fit,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Um, you can do that too, but like most of the time guys are unless they're just way in over their heads, are able to figure it out. And then there's some people who get exposed as frauds. I think Willie Taggart was one, and who I covered, who didn't their best player, Quentin Flowers, has been like their best player the last 15 years. didn't he didn't want to start him. He wanted to start a dude that was a transfer named Stephen Bench who had come from an SEC school. Like that, it
Huh.
made no sense. Like
Yeah.
this guy, and he got saved by two guys who came up with an offense that was impossible to stop. And like he rode those coattails into a job at Oregon where he did okay because they're really talented, and then to Florida State where it all fell apart.
Yeah.
And you see this over and over again with these guys that they're writing pieces of things or whatever that comes together and then it falls apart when they can't replace staff and this is where I'll get interesting with Brent, right? This is his
Right.
first big test here in terms of the offense was really the thing you hung your hat on at Georgia Tech, and Buster's gone, and Buster, Chris Winkie, and Brent Key were the three guys who ran the offense.
Right.
There was a collaboration between those guys, which they talked about at the time, but somehow people have like missed upon that this was a
Hmm.
conversation all the time, even when Buster was here. But like
Huh.
now he's got, George Godsey as a first time play caller in the college level as a guy that has only done it a little bit in the NFL. It'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see what that collaboration looks like, how that shows up in a game with new quarterbacks and all that stuff. But this is sort of his big first test, right? Like the thing
Yeah.
that, and I've talked to Brent about this before. The thing that makes Nick Saban so great is he was able to rehire and hire guys each cycle. He would lose guys to other jobs as head coaches or
Right.
whatever. And he's able to backfill, and he had a bench of guys. And Brent's built a bench of guys. Like
Yeah.
Alan Mogridge, who's the O-line coach, was
Yeah.
a guy he brought in as an assistant O-line coach 2 years ago. And then he went and got another O-line job and then came back here when they parted ways with Jeep Wade. Like the that's how you do it. There's a bunch of young coaches. So I see the pieces of what makes sense and what is builds a successful program. It's kind of what Kirby's done at Georgia and what Ryan Day and Urban Meyer at
Hmm.
Ohio State have done as well, developing guys and then being able to backfill as with quality dudes and not going out and hiring Chip Kelly or whoever to be a splashy hire, but
Right.
instead I'm going to get a guy that's a ball coach to be my offense coordinator or defense coordinator or whatever.
Yeah. Chip probably would have been a very untech like hire in the grand scheme
He's a
of a lot
weird
of these
dude,
guys.
man.
Like,
He's a
yeah.
strange guy, like from everyone I've talked to. Like he knows
Huh.
football really well, but it was not a culture or personality fit whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
that makes sense. Um, yeah, you mentioned all these ways of backfilling. Like, I mean, yeah, that's go watch any Bama game in the last 15 years, and you'll see a bunch of dudes on those sidelines. Like, oh, he just out the head coach there. Oh, he's the he. I saw him at whatever other X school winning big games there too. And so, I mean, we haven't exactly had we still have to actually do that part of it, like prove that Brett has that ability and that it actually works out and down the line. But it's a step in the right direction, it seems, to know like, hey, he's seen this before. He's been part of that cycle himself over at BAM and other places too. So, yeah, they'll be very interesting to just see how that all meshes together. Because I mean, he hasn't done this where he's been the head honcho too. So there's some amount of like, how does he set the tone with a new slate of guys and with people that also were there for the previous regime too, and how does
And
that
to
all
be
adapt?
to be honest with you, that's what fell apart for Paul Johnson, like in his tenure.
Hmm.
If you go back and look at the first few years I was covering the program, which was his second year on, he had so I just saw Jeff Monken the other day. I was down at the American thing in Tampa. You had Jeff Monken, who's the head coach at Army. You had Charles Kelly, who's a head coach at Jacksonville State. He was a longtime defensive coordinator. You had Andy McCollum, who's a former head coach on staff. You had Giff Smith, who's been in the NFL forever. Brian John Murray, who's been a defensive coordinator all over college football. You had Shane Bowen as a GA, who's been a defensive coordinator in the NFL now for years. Chris Hampton, who's a defensive coordinator at Oregon, was a GA for him. Like you had all these people, but it's hard to keep that up. And that was one of the things I think, in part, along with NIL, that forced Coach Saban out was like it is tiring to constantly refill those coffers
Yeah.
and develop coaches and then have them leave. But it's something I think Brent's accepted as being part of his MO as a thing. And he's done it a little bit like Santucci.
Yep.
Got hired in the NFL. Like you see Buster going to Florida, which Buster views as an upward move. Tech fans don't, but perception wise across college football, it would appear to be an upward move in terms of
Yeah.
getting him a better head coaching opportunity down the line, or an NFL OC opportunity if it goes well. If it doesn't,
Hmm.
then he might be back on the bench at UGA. But like, um, it's that process that's part of this, and getting guys hired on as assistant coaches at other places, and who are your GAs or staff assistants or whatever. Like Jason Seymour is a great example of that.
Yep.
He sent Jason to go be a defensive coordinator. He could have kept him probably as a position coach, but he wanted him to get seasoning so he could bring him back. The guy I would keep an eye on if you're a Tech fan right now is Corey Dennis out at UNLV. I think
Hmm.
if Goose does well and can parlay this into, either an NFL OC opportunity again or a head coaching opportunity somewhere, that Corey will come back and be the next offensive coordinator at Georgia Tech. Like there's a pattern to some of the stuff that Brent does that I think is really
Hmm.
interesting. And he is not married to, I got to coach the offense and it's my offense. I'm the offensive coordinator or defense or special teams or any of that stuff. So he's able to look at the big picture a little differently. I think that's where a guy like Saban or maybe Kirby Smart might get more burned out, where it's their defense. They're coaching the defense, right?
Right.
And
They're a coach. They're
yeah,
a coach first. Brent, and this kind of gets into something I was thinking about is like the adaptability that's been required of Brent. He's been on both sides of this eras of college football, of kind of the back end of the traditional styles, so to say, and then this explosion and rules changing and eligibility and all that kind of stuff. So he's seen both ways of how it can be done, and probably knows my job is, yes, there's a position coach in me, but there is much more of a staff manager in me too, and a like acting as a CEO in a lot of ways versus acting like a just a normal head ball coach kind of thing.
Well,
He seems to know the job position is very different than it was even 5 years ago.
and any good mentor or leader, their bench getting picked to have people go on to quote unquote bigger and better things. I think Santucci's probably the best example of that. But perception is as it is for other departures. Like it's a compliment to the program that you're putting together, the culture you're putting together, and putting guys in a position to succeed. So
Yeah.
it's better than the alternative. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, one of the assistant strength coaches just got a head strength job. Jordan Diaz. He was the assistant. He was the speed coach essentially for
Hmm.
the program. He's the head strength coach at North Texas now, which is a step up for
Oh,
him. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
there's ways this works that make a lot of sense. Like, and that's what you kind of want to see. You don't, and also the other thing, man, is if you have the same people forever, this is also something I saw with Paul, is you have stagnation and you have,
Yep.
yeah, it's like any other job, right? Like if you do the same exact thing all the time, you will get burned out if you cannot find ways
Yeah.
to make it interesting for yourself,
Yeah.
whatever it is you do, like whether you're driving a forklift or like, working in journalism or whatever it is, you have to constantly create ways to keep it interesting for yourself,
Yep.
or you are going to get in a situation where you become complacent and don't challenge yourself and start to regress in terms of what you're doing.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. You
Yep.
could point to a gazillion football teams that have done that. I
Yep.
like Dallas Cowboys are my favorite example of that. Uh, but um, another thing that's come to mind is it actually is important to have a good kicker. It's a small thing, but I wanted to double check some stats on it. And back when in the final year of Gavin Stewart, who was not the worst kicker Tech's ever had, we were at 4.9 points a game on kicking, so PATs, extra points, things like that. With Burr last year, who was on track to become the points leader, surpassing Harrison Butker, he kicked 9.2 points a game last year, which is yes, we scored a hell of a lot of touchdowns. That's part of the equation there, but it's like no, you're buying a touchdown plus a game just off of a dude's leg, which makes a huge difference when it comes to a lot of these one-score, multi-score games. Jakes, don't give me that face.
Jack, your over the top Aiden Burr propaganda is fine when it's just us, but now we have guests. No, I think he's a good kicker and he's very competent. But I guarantee that if Akshay were here, he would chime in about red zone and go decisions in a
Fourth
way
downs,
that
yeah,
I
yeah.
am. I was going to say in a way that I am not nearly as statistically minded, but we're just going to put insert Akshay caveat here. And the listeners, if this is your first podcast with us, just wait a month. You'll be hearing about it. It's a point they make all the time. But if it's not your first podcast, you know what I'm getting at. So,
Well, to another point though, it's like it's one of those little things. It's a thing you can forget
oh,
about, and
totally,
we
totally,
kind of did
yeah,
forget about for a few years there. And so, like, I think him being as good as he is a reflection of a lot of little things you probably don't see behind, we don't see coming together and setting him up to be a successful kicker as well.
yeah.
Um, and he's had me to dad be that dude's as famous as anybody on the team this year, just because he's been around a while. So that's my I want to put that in there. So Kelly, you might be able to explain this a little bit better than me. I put in here kind of not knowing if this was a real thing or not, but clock management being a learned skill because that's not a coordinator thing, that's not a position coach thing. But I know we've had moments, at least watching on the fan side of things, it's been like, hey, it seems like we jumbled the time here or wasted some time. I know the Clemson game almost went that way this past year, where it's like, what are we doing? Why didn't we take a knee on it? Like in that last drive, something like that. That one worked out, thank God. But uh, I feel is there something there to this that like that it takes time to understand how to do these moments when it's like 30 seconds and you've got to manage your timeouts, you got to manage what play you're running and things like that. 'Cause it seems like a lot in the moment to try to process, and you have to game plan for it in some form or fashion if it's going to be successful.
Sure, and Brent has like a sounding board group of guys that help him with that stuff. Brendan Farrell and Pat Boyle and some other guys. And
Mm-hmm.
like the issue sometimes, so like in the Boston College game, it was funny because JJ Kosh, who's the GM at Georgia Tech, was sitting next to me in the press box, and they had this weird moment where they called a timeout, and it was like a fourth down situation or kick the game-winning field goal,
Mm-hmm.
and they left time on the clock. And we're like, what the hell are they doing? And it's because the ref on Tech's sideline on the far sideline marked as a first down.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so Brent
Mm,
called a timeout, but we couldn't see it live. I could see it wasn't first down from where I was looking in the press box, looking down and seeing the TV feed, like being able to look up and see that. But he saw, you can only see what he sees. He sees them mark it, so clocks it to give himself more time to maybe try to punch it in so they don't have to kick a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's stuff like that sometimes, like miscommunication with refs that suck, or like maybe a situation hasn't come up. I think of how they lost the Citadel game with Jeff. Like,
Yep.
they call a
Oh,
timeout on a broken play where Tobias Oliver scores like
I
the
remember
game-winning
that. Yeah.
touchdown,
Yeah.
and then they
I was
call
on the goal
timeout.
line for that. Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
And
Me in the
and then
car.
what was the other thing that happened in that one too? They the mark on the ready or whatever instead of starting the clock on the ready instead, and like things like that. And that's a coaching. Some of those are just experience wise. Like if you're a quarterback, maybe you have a little bit more, had been a college quarterback, maybe you have a little bit more knowledge of that stuff. But a lot of times that's a learned thing. That's where, having, Bobby Ross or Paul Johnson as a head coach who had a lot of experience with a lot of stuff, they navigated those waters a little bit better
Yeah.
than a guy who's a first time head coach. So, I think he's improving. You're still seeing some, and he will tell you. I mean, the one thing about Brent is he is very honest about all this stuff. Like he knows there are things he has to improve upon. He works on it every year. He makes a
Mhm.
list of stuff I need to get better at. When he first got the head coaching job, he would hit me up and a couple other people, I think, as well, just to like, how am I doing with my press conferences? Like,
Mhm.
is there anything I could do to be a little bit better? Like, just trying to get feedback so he has an understanding of, uh, you know, all aspects of his job. And I think he's been very open to both criticism and self-critique, which is really important in terms of looking
Yeah.
at everything. That's why he hired Gotze. Like he had a group of guys who weren't aligned with him that had different opinions about a lot of stuff. Those guys are all gone now. Like he cleaned them out of the staff and hired new people that would be aligned. And there were a couple people I was surprised lost jobs that weren't on the offensive side of the ball that maybe were not aligned with him, or in the back room. And I kind of knew it just from knowing those people, but like, it's interesting that he picked up on those things and made those changes as well, like
Yep.
to have alignment from the top down. And it doesn't mean he wants yes man, but it also means you can't have somebody second guessing everything you do either. And
Right.
so,
I'm I'm glad you added that because that was going to be my first follow-up question.
no, no, you don't want yes man. And he does, like, he takes, like, they argue things out, they discuss things. Like, there are a lot of guys with strong opinions in that room. He has two of the biggest ones are two former head coaches that are his sounding board guys, which is Don Ely and Brian Bohannon.
Yeah.
And the guy I failed to mention was talking about Paul's coaching staff, but Coach Bohannon had a tremendous run at Kennesaw State, and
Mhm.
having those guys there to bounce stuff off of is huge for him. Like he
For
can
sure.
talk
Yeah.
about whatever scenario, or sometimes it's off the field stuff. Sometimes it's like, should we gamble on taking this kid that maybe is a little bit questionable character, academic, whatever the flaw is, or they have like, parents that are pain in the ass or whatever it is. Like those things are all part of this too. And it's weird because ultimately you're in a business and he has like 200 something people he's in charge of when you factor in staff and
Right.
all the players, like, and then, the people in the building and, everything from like grounds crew people. Like there's tons of people that he has responsibility for in one way or another. And it's a lot. And so, um, to answer your question, I think that he's improving. There's still room to be better at that stuff. But I think some of that too is the confidence in your staff, man, to execute and get the call in. Maybe Buster's slowing the call and like that's screwing things up
Right.
with timing, or like
Yeah.
he's telling them to throw the football and Brent absolutely does not want them to throw the football in that
Right.
situation. We don't know because we're not on the headsets in those
Right.
spots. And he's not going to be a guy who's going to throw someone under the bus in the press conference and be like,
Yep.
hey, so and so asked me to do this in that spot. And I didn't agree with them, so I had to call a timeout and we had to discuss it. So we didn't get
Right.
caught with our pants down on 4th and 1 when we should be under center trying, and we're in the
Yeah.
gun or whatever.
Yeah. No, on the press conference front, he has gotten funnier. His quips are getting good. That I always look
He
if
has a
ever
weird sense of humor too.
he
Like that's
does.
something that people.
The magical world of Disney, we're engineers, not Imagineers, or whatever that was. That one lives rent free in my head, and I was like, "Oh, he's a funny guy. I
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this," you
Yeah.
know.
So he's got
He was a
some, but
huge ball buster too. Like That's when you know you're in if he's like busting your balls. Like
It
when
was a
there's
badge of honor when he laid one on me after the Duke game. I was like,
okay.
all right, I made it a little bit here.
Yeah.
I'm worthy of a condescending comment. When it was all said and done. So, uh, the last bit, the last one I had to discuss was talking about just how to manage guys' health throughout the year. I know last year was we had a lot of guys that the whole team was obviously dependent on how on King's health. Jamal Haynes was intermittently healthy, not healthy over the last couple of years, and just with how many runs he was getting, it seemed like there were just some games where he just wasn't jumping as well as he usually would get at some jump cuts and things like that. But I mean, there's some level you can't manage that. It's just like how does a guy get hit on a particular play and what that can do for the rest of the season, kind of thing. But is there something knowing that it's like, hey, if things go right, you're going to play basically an NFL season's worth of games, and you have to think about, and that's something you probably got to think about when you're playing Tennessee or even Colorado or Mercer in these kind of games. Is that, how have you seen that possibly change throughout these last couple of years? Because it felt like there may have been some times late last season we could have rotated maybe a tad bit more that we just didn't, and because we were just so hell bent on these guys getting these wins for us, and it might have been us in the butt. Who the hell knows? But where have you seen on that front?
I think a lot of that came down to some coaches not trusting players in certain situations,
Mm,
particularly you look at linebacker, they have those guys on the field too much defensive
it's a
line.
lot. Yeah.
And they went and spent money to build depth out. Like they have the most depth they've had on the D line in forever here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
going back to O'Leary or something like that. Like in the secondary, that's where it bit them 2 years ago in 24 is they got really thin at corner. That cost them the Georgia game essentially in a way too that year. It was
Mhm.
just having injured guys out trying to cover dudes.
Right.
Like,
I remember the secondary was just so depleted. It's just like, what can you put out there anymore? Like their wide receivers just going to beat our third stringers every day.
yeah.
That's not a thing.
So now it's been about developing quality depth throughout the program. That's something that takes time, and that's something he feels like he finally has. Um, with Jamal, it was funny. He got hurt in fall camp last year. We were out there when it happened, and he like tweaked his ankle and ankle foot, whatever it was. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh no. And like from that point on, there was maybe a game or two where he was sort of normal, but he was
Right.
not. But they kept trotting him out there, and Trelane Maddox had a couple fumbles and some health issues. I think if he was healthier and been more productive, they would have maybe run him a little more. And then Malachi got hurt too. Like he got hurt in the
Yeah.
Boston College game, which impacted the next game,
Yeah.
which was NC State. Was that right? Is that right? Or
Boston.
vice versa, or
NC
whatever it
State
was.
was before
Well,
Boston.
Pitt. So it
Yeah.
was the Pitt game he didn't play. Like
Yeah.
there was one of
Yeah.
them where he just didn't play. He was hurt. Like, and they didn't make a big deal out of it. But like, there's a lot of that. Like wear and tear. And so he feels like they're five deep in the running back room. You got
Yeah.
two quarterbacks, maybe three that would feel comfortable playing in a game. They're four deep, five deep in the tight end room. Receivers, the one kind of interesting one. We'll see how that develops with some young guys there. But defensively, there's depth at every position that they feel comfortable with. All the way
That's huge.
through.
That's huge. That's not a normal statement that we've been used to
No,
at all.
there's a little bit of inexperience at a couple spots, maybe like backup nickel, the Elgin Sessions, or like a young safety might have to play if something happened to Taylor Phoenix or
Yeah.
Savion Riley. But like, really, for the most part, they're pretty deep, and that was something he's really been working on and striving towards since he got the head coaching job after the 22 season. But it takes time to build that depth. We're
Right.
in his fourth year now. Like all of that stuff is just initially he had to win enough to keep the job, right? Like
Right.
the focus is there and
Yeah.
establishing that you can win, and then it's trying to build your roster out, and then it's all these other things. And so they're finally at the point where they have quality depth, and he feels like there's not a huge drop off if you put in Braylon Outlaw at linebacker for Kyle Eford or EJ Lightsey, that
Yeah.
there's not going to be this tremendous drop off, which is what they were scared of if they played one of the young linebackers in the past. Like
Yeah.
those things are huge. And on the offensive line, same thing. Like, they've developed a guy like Jordan Floyd has developed a lot over the last 2 years. And he's a guy who could actually play real snaps now. Now he might not ever have to because of Josh Petty and some other dudes, but like you could put him out at left tackle and he would hold his own,
Right.
and they're three deep at that spot, or they're four deep at right tackle, or whatever it is. Like that's the first time they've had that kind of depth in a while, and I think it will pay off for them, especially because you have the bye week after the Stanford game. You got to play 8 straight in the back
Yeah.
end, or more if you're having a good year, and that's where it's going to pay off for them having that depth. I think you can get through those first 4 games, but it's like after that, that's when you're really going to start to get tested.
How do you do the rotate? How do you rotate well? How do you make sure you're not putting guys out in plays that just don't need to be out there for as well? Because yeah, we go, but you're back from California, and it's alternating home and road every week, and
Yep.
so it's gonna be a slog. Thankfully, they only the furthest we go to is Pittsburgh, so it's not like we're absolutely tearing them up in terms of traveled miles and things like that. So that's good. Yeah, and that Pittsburgh game, Haynes King ran 20 times. Jamal Haynes ran 10 times, but he only averaged he averaged 4 carry. He only got the ball 10 times, and for the longest of 9. Like he was not effective. Chad Alexander had 2 carries. Malachi had 1. Like I mean, Haynes King getting the ball a lot of the time makes sense, but I don't think you want him rushing 20 times in a game if you don't have to have him rushing 20 times in a game on design plays and scrambles and things like that. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, schedule wise, you're looking, yeah, 3 straight home games: Stanford, and then Duke at home. Go to Blacksburg, got BC, go to Pittsburgh, Louisville at home, which not to go schedule watching, but like you're glad that one's at home probably this year. Clemson on the road. If that game, I think that's probably a good game of demarcation there against Clemson because yeah, we usually play up to them to some extent. They're not the Clemson of old, of course, either. And so if you're put up like, hey, these second stringers are actually holding their own, you've got it as a 17-13 game early in the fourth quarter. That feels like a sign of progress in a lot of ways, at
Yeah,
least
and
for
you
me.
don't know where, that's going to be really interesting. Them and Florida State are going to be two really interesting teams to watch for very different reasons. Like, like Mark Norvell going to be the head coach by the middle of their season? And then
Seriously, right? Yeah, I
what
wish we
happens
played
with,
them this year.
yeah, and what happens with Clemson? Because Clemson, before they play Tech, have LSU and Miami and
Hmm.
Virginia Tech and trips to Florida State and Syracuse, which they should win. But like, they're going to be pretty battle tested too, or things could be going sideways
Or
again.
I was gonna say, or their season could be in the dumpster already. I mean that
Yeah, who
that
knows? Yeah,
that's the them's the breaks with that. And I don't know that I was preparing to unbox this shiny new take, but with Franklin at Virginia Tech and reasonable consistency from Georgia Tech or Miami, I don't know. I feel like there's openings in the top of the hype bubble or the good TV slot bubble if you are a Georgia Tech or Virginia Tech or Miami type of fan in a ways that maybe, you know, 5, 7 years ago there weren't. So I don't know. Something to keep an eye on this year. I haven't thought
yeah.
that one all the way out yet, Jack, as you know, because you haven't heard that one yet.
No,
So
I haven't. We'll talk about that in the next two
yeah,
to three weeks whenever we do more
yeah,
football preview related things. So that's cool.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I feel like I learned a lot in terms of lessons learned in the last five years here. This is great. Jake, can you walk us through some Section 103 stuff before we keep going?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, it's been a minute since I've talked about Section 103, but they're as great as ever. I think my biggest thing that I saw flipping through the site, new jersey type of shirts. That would be for presumptive starting quarterback Alberto Mendoza and Justice Haynes. Keep an eye out for their. They're always adding cool stuff over at Section 103. Stephen and the gang. Tell them we sent you FTRS for 10% off, free shipping on orders over $100. I think that's most of the tech stuff I saw, but yeah, they've got great stuff for half dozen other schools as well. So yeah, tell them we sent you, and section103.com and at section103 on Instagram. Jack, that's what I got.
Awesome. We're keeping Kelly here for a second because the Georgia Tech Hall of Fame class was announced in the last couple days here, which has this list of people: Jeremiah Atashu, who was a linebacker and a sack king for Tech from '09 to 13; Harrison Butker, who of course was the big time kicker here at Tech; Matt Gonzalez, who was a multi-position fielder for the baseball team from 13 to 16; Danny Hall, don't need to mention who he is; Grover Hinsdale, people on this podcast know who he is; Darrell Miller, who was a high jump and triple jumper in the aughts; Jillian O'Neill, who played tennis for 2 years here, but was fantastic when she was here; Seth Reeves was on the golf team for 4 years; Mike Stamus Moose, who, if those in the sports business know him, he's been a legend of the flats for a long time and just a general NCAA. uh, communications work, and then Steve Zelnak, who has been a big time donor of all the Tech programs. And actually, as I found out today, played a year of baseball at Tech. Didn't know he had done that,
Huh.
but he did actually suit up for the Jackets. So I feel like that's his is more of an honorary designation, but that's a good little. I feel like that's a nice little add on there to make sure. It's like, okay, he actually did. He put the jersey on. So, um, Kelly, you've seen a lot of these people walk through. You've covered a lot of these people. Just for I'm kind of selfishly just wanted to hear like, what do you remember about Jeremiah when he was playing? Remember about Harrison? Because that's definitely a different time of Tech history, and also kind of reflection of like, hey,
Matt
back when
too.
yeah, and when defense was a thing for Tech as well.
Yeah, so Jeremiah was the backstory of Jeremiah. I got to know him very briefly as a recruit, but really well when he was at Tech. He was an Al Groh guy. I think he was committed
Hmm.
to Virginia, if I remember correctly, and then Al Groh got fired, and Paul Johnson hired him as a defensive coordinator. He was at school. He was in one of the maybe Archbishop Carroll, one of those in the
Mm.
DMV, and just kind of a twitchy outside linebacker. They were putting in the 3-4 then, and he was going to play like that jack position and be the kind of edge rusher and just a great dude. And I know that most Tech fans, their lingering memory, the one that I always think of, unfortunately, whenever I think of Jeremiah, is the when he punched Logan Thomas to lose the Virginia Tech game, basically.
Yeah,
And one of the craziest things ever. Like he got that weird flag, and then they had another one where it was Brian Chamberlain, one of the offensive linemen, did the same thing. They like punched at a player or something and got how did he punch? I'm trying to remember. Whatever, he got a personal foul. It was late
yeah,
hit or whatever it was, Jeremiah, in that game. That was a huge play. But very good pass rusher. Played in the NFL, bunch of different teams. And I feel like he ended his career with the Jets, maybe. Um,
Hmm.
and always a great dude. When still run into him, hey Kelly, big hugs.
oh, it's
I've
great.
seen him a few times. He had a brother who was kind of a borderline recruit that I helped him with a little bit many years ago. I think he ended up at a maybe D2, D3 school, but unfortunately was not as gifted physically in terms of height and size and stuff as Jeremiah. But great dude. Really enjoy getting to know him. And then Harrison, I did get to know well because before I was covering Tech, I did some high school preps and I covered a lot of the private league
Hmm.
newspapers, and so I knew Westminster really well and got to know him through that. And it was always a great dude at Tech. Unbelievable kicker in the back half of his career at Tech.
Yeah.
I just once it clicked for him, always had a strong leg, but once it clicked, really clicked. I'll never forget he replaced maybe the worst kicker in Georgia Tech history. It was a kid named Justin Moore, who
Hmm.
once did a kickoff that was a slice that like went up into the stands sideways. Like
Oh
it
no.
went like
Oh
40. I never forget that. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And Justin was dismissed for whatever reasons back in the day. And then Harrison ended up as the kicker and just did a tremendous job. And obviously,
yeah.
everyone remembers the Georgia game and
Hmm.
his kick in that and being that was cool being on the field for that and how excited he was and then seeing him in the NFL and the career he's had and all that and it's been incredible and he's been such a linchpin of the Chiefs' success as well.
Seriously. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's been cool to see all that. I've been very happy for him and obviously Jeremiah were both great dudes when they were at Tech. I haven't talked to Harrison in a long time. Probably been 7 or 8 years at this point. But Jeremiah, I've kept up with.
Nice. Jeremiah he is both a San Diego and Los Angeles Charger at the front and back ends of his career. But yeah, he was with the Jets, Broncos, Bears, and Ravens over the between 2014 and 2022. So yeah, that's a long NFL career. Like that is like
Yeah.
more than a year, you're doing something right, of course.
And he's
So
got the
it's
pension working for him, and
yeah,
he's a sharp dude too. So I'm sure he's doing well in life.
yeah.
It's probably good. I don't know if that time I probably need to catch up with Jeremiah. Um,
Second
yeah,
round pick. So yeah, oh, it's great. Uh, we've mentioned this time and time again on the pod, but it's just been such an interesting year to see so many people like Hall and Hinsdale, just guys that have been around for long, long, long
Hepler.
time. Hepler all leave basically within 12 months of each other.
yeah.
Um,
I mean,
Yeah.
Hinsdale was like I think at Tech before I was born.
He
Like,
wa- he started in his listing on the post on Rambling Wreck says he was here started here at 79.
yeah, so I was born in 1980, and then Moose started like 3 years after I was born or something. So
Hmm.
like, like these were, and Danny Hall was here through basically my entire time as a journalist.
Yeah.
Whether I was here or covering other stuff, and so yeah, it is very weird to. It makes you feel old too, like, to be honest with you. Covering Morgan Burnett's kid this year was another.
Yeah.
MJ was another one of those. I was like, oh God, I'm really getting old now. Covering
I,
dudes that I first covered at Georgia Tech's kids is getting a little.
that's hey, but, well, you're in the boat now too. Like you're part of the bandwagon of folks that just don't leave the institute, whether you like it or not, at this
No,
point.
it's fine. I
So
love it. I enjoy Georgia Tech. I like the fans. I've enjoyed this way more than I've had the opportunity to cover five SEC schools in different ways, and like some other. And Tech has always been the one I've enjoyed the most, which is why I've stuck with it.
nice. What do you got, Jake?
I was going to say that I think Harrison's the first one that I overlapped with at Tech, which will tell you exactly when I showed up, given that Matt Gonzalez is spring 2013 to spring 2016. But yeah, I saw that list and I was like, it's about that time. It's about that time. But yeah, no. So not to indulge myself there, but did want to shout out Matt Gonzalez before long here because I don't know. That's I remember like signing on the dotted line to come to Georgia Tech, and I was like, all right, I need to get educated. What is going on down there? And it was, of course, baseball season. So
Yeah.
yeah, one of the first like connections I remember feeling. Though, Kelly, I've probably said this on the podcast a million times and people are sick of hearing it. Iman Shumpert and I did go to the same high school. So my reaction to that as a, I don't know, whatever year old fan of that team was, he's going where? Why? Oh, how far we've come.
I did
But
check
yeah.
Max baseball reference. He only got up to A ball. He did
Oh
play for the
no.
he played for
Uh,
he played for the Rome Braves, so that's I mean, now the Rome Emperors. So he stayed local-ish, but yeah, he stopped playing after independent ball in
huh.
2018. So yeah, didn't make it all the way there. Many don't. So uh rest of the news wise, Matt Taylor got promoted to associate head coach for the baseball team. Josh Schulman is now the recruiting coordinator for baseball. Uh, more rules weirdness. I feel like I knew this beforehand, but I'm glad this came up. Is that it used to be that teams could do one international trip every 4 years, which usually is like a basketball, volleyball kind of thing. Taking an entire football team out across the pond is becoming commonplace now that we've got games in London, Paris, and Ireland this year, I want to say. Uh, but now you can just do it every year. So the basketball team's going to go to the Bahamas for a week and I guess have a preseason bonding trip and play some exhibition games, which,
We're going to play some Bahamian teams down there
oh,
in
nice.
early August. So it's not going to be necessarily the most challenging of
No.
trips for them. And good luck finding any stats or scores or anything
Right.
else. I already talked to Scott Cross about this. I was like, so how do he goes, you're not going to be able to like watch it or see anything.
Oh, man.
The makers wanted basketball preseason tour. Anyone? Anyone? Bahamas Bowl? No.
Oh, man.
Mm.
It
Ah,
does add to Tech's very interesting list of opponents they've had in basketball over the course of its entire history, from the Soviet Union and various YMCA's and the athletic club
Marathon
and
Oil.
Marathon Oil
That
is another
bakery.
one. Yep,
Wasn't there
yep.
like some
Yeah.
YMCA's too they played or
Oh
something?
yeah,
Like,
I think
Oh
the first
yeah.
they
Hold
played like
on.
the Cincinnati
Uh,
YMCA, multiple versions of the YMCA in Atlanta.
I I think they played the Lithuanian national team at
They
some
did
point
play
too.
Lithuania. I think they did play Lithuania at one point. Yeah,
My
there's
people.
me. Yeah, I know me and Annie DeBetcher have bonded over these very weird facts that have
oh
come
yeah,
to
I'm
out for
sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Jack, this is a good reminder, and I'm going to say it on air to hold myself accountable. I have to
Great.
update the master sheet, so
Yes,
it's
you do.
coming.
Yes, you
Yeah,
do.
it's been like a year and a half.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So there is
uh,
that. And last thing, we don't have to belabor this. We wrote a whole piece. I wrote a whole piece on this a while ago, but we haven't talked about the new football uniforms on the pod officially. I'm not calling this universal praise, just from what I've seen across the interwebs and people I've talked with, but Uh, Jake, I don't know if you care much about this. This will be another thing we'll bring up with Akshay later because I know he's got opinions on this. But do either of you care about this, or this is like okay, whatever? They wear clothes on the field. Good for them.
They all look
I'm
about the
I'm
same
glad
to
they do
me.
that.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah.
of course, yeah,
I mean, like, how different are, I mean, other than honeycombs, like, we haven't really seen, and some of the weird, like, stuff they've tried over the years, like, the base uniforms all look about the same,
yeah, yeah,
roughly.
yeah.
And it's like, as long as they're
Yeah.
not uncomfortable for the kids, like, it
True.
doesn't
Yeah,
really
yeah,
matter that much. Like, but
yeah.
fans seem less angry about these than they have the last couple of changes. Like, so
I
Yeah.
only dislike one piece, and that's those dark pants. I'm not a fan of them, but I've also never been a big like black, dark gray Georgia Tech uniform kind of guy. I do
Yeah.
like the like shading in the numbers. At least that's a little bit different. But otherwise,
Yeah, it's something.
they
Yeah.
got the word mark on them. They're gold, they're white.
Yeah.
They're gonna wear them. Like they're gonna do that regardless of what I think. So
There's
yeah,
probably gonna be like 8 different helmet stickers they use this year because now
yeah.
that's the thing that they do where they just change the helmet every week because it's a
Those are
sticker.
fun. I like those a lot. The
That's been
the like the T
the T,
homecoming
the
one.
Tech T is cool. I like the Tech T.
I'm sure there'll be a power there's no way there won't be a power T game this year. I have no
Uh,
information on that, but I would be surprised if they didn't wheel that back out for a
uh,
game.
I need a sickly buzz on the T. You know, the like old school
Yeah,
looking.
like the 60s,
Yeah,
60s buzz,
yeah,
40s to 60s buzz.
yeah,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I'd love that.
Mhm.
I mean, I have texted people at Tech to be like, make this happen, please, but put the wreck on the helmet at one point, or or as like a thing on the shoulder, like the shoulder emblem kind of thing. Like I feel like there's still a untrodden pasture for all of the visual identity that can be put on these things. I mean, it is our biggest
Yeah.
billboard is literally the football uniforms when it's all said and done. So, uh, could do something with that. So I don't know. We'll see them
Yeah.
out there. I agree with you, Jake. The shorts are they're black. They're gonna say they're not, but why do they look black? That whatever. That all I know is another team wears that, then I don't like. So that's where I fall there. Anyways, Kelly, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Where can people find your work and everything across the
Sure.
internet?
Jackets Online, part of the On3 network. Kelly underscore Quinlan on the X, and then Instagram. I think it's just Jackets Online. I'm not super active on Instagram, but Twitter is the main one that I kind of post on, and then the site's the main thing. Biggest paid tech community, and we're the largest media outlet covering Georgia Tech these days, which is sad state
Yeah,
of affairs with the Atlanta Journal Constitution. That's a
I
different
know we're
story.
waiting on them. Where's the new
They're not
guy?
hiring, dude. They're not hiring anybody, man. Don't
Ah,
hold your breath on that one.
yeah, probably not.
Um,
Hmm.
they have
We'll just make Chad come back in November when the Braves are done.
that's probably. I mean, they're going to end up. They're just doing it by committee, I think, at this point, which
Yeah.
is sad, but that's how it is, man. They barely like hired somebody to cover the Falcons, apparently. So,
Yeah, I got it. It was a yeah a recent college grad that
They
got
don't
put in that job.
they
So
don't print a physical paper anymore. Like
no, it's
no,
just very sad. This used to be like the sports department, like Schleyball and all these dudes, and back in the day, like
yeah,
and Dave
yeah,
O'Brien, and
yeah. Once all the legacy guys left, it's like, well, that's it. That was kind of the end of that. But oh
yeah,
well.
it's a slow, sad death for the paper, but it's something that
mm,
we all expected. My old boss, when I first started doing rival stuff years ago, was like, he said that there were a bunch of dinosaurs sitting around a fire complaining about it's getting cold outside. And that was the newspaper business. And he's not wrong. It just took a lot longer, I think, than he anticipated for it to kind of go that way.
Yeah, yeah.
yep,
That is a
yep.
sad state of things. Jake, take us home.
With that lovely note, as always, from the rumbleseat.com, that's the best place to find what Jack and I write. When we write it, you can email us from the rumbleseat at gmail.com. We want to hear from you. Check out Stephen and the Gang at Section 103 on the social medias and section103.com. You can find this podcast wherever fine podcasts are sold, distributed, or the like. Until we talk again, good night, good luck, and go Jackets.